Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Sass. I am the Artistic Director of Ragged Wing Ensemble and host of Moment to Moment. For those of you who are joining for the first time, this is a live talk series exploring what can be learned, felt, and created during this time of great transformation. This program is produced by Ragged Wing Ensemble, a small but mighty theater and arts organization. It was born out of a need to connect, to spark dialogue, and to do what humans have always done since ancient times: share stories. By sharing stories, we evolve humanity. As we begin tonight, I'm going to do two things before we dive in. The first is I'm going to read Ragged Wing Ensemble's statement of solidarity to the Black Lives Matter movement right now. And then afterwards, we're going to take it down a notch, and we're going to do a brief meditation to just get ourselves centered and ready to dive in full force. After the meditation, we're going to raise the energy, and we're going to welcome our guest and get going. Okay, so that's what we're about to do. Bear with me, I got music to handle here, and then we're gonna go. Okay. Statement of solidarity. Ragged Wing Ensemble stands in protest of police brutality, systemic racism, oppression, and specifically the murders of countless Black and brown people. We acknowledge that the very foundation of this country is rooted in centuries of white supremacy. This moment is a call to action, a moment to take a hard look at our systems, institutions, leadership roles, and relationships and ask, how are we creating and perpetuating racial trauma? What do we each need to dismantle in order to change? What power do we need to let go of? What work do we need to do in a daily way to make the world safe for people of color? We don't have all the answers, and asking questions is only the beginning. As artists, we must use our gifts to root out the ways we perpetuate racist systems, and we must work daily to break the patterns that poison our country, our communities, and our industry, because it is a poison. We must listen, and we must continue to learn. Ragged Wing commits to using our skills and platform to expose inequity, cultivate connections, and fight for racial justice. There are some action steps that we are taking in the coming weeks, and we invite you to take this action with us. The actions include, and we're going to be putting this in the chat and also in the comments on Facebook Live, so please go ahead and use these resources. The actions include donate, support Black-led organizations on the ground, support them every day, not just today and not just in an emergency. Show up. Join in-person marches, demonstration, and actions that demand racial justice. Plug into the actions of Black-led organizations and follow their lead. Personal relationships. We want you to invest in personal relationships. And I'm saying this for myself and for all of us. Have the tough conversations within your community, your family, and organizations about how to dismantle racism within your own spaces. Check in with how people are doing, especially if they are directly affected by these issues or are putting their bodies on the line to participate in actions. Educate yourself. Don't put the burden on people of color to educate you about the history and impact of white supremacy. Read, watch, and learn how to be an ally using some of these resources. And we've got several resources here that we're pointing you to. And I have been investigating these, and I'm going to continue to investigate them, and I invite you to join me in all of this. Okay. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to take us down a notch. Thank you for the snaps. Thank you for the encouragement. This is really important work right now. I feel like it is the work. To officially begin, I invite you to join me in a simple meditation. So I know that we use these devices, and I say this every time, so many of you have heard me say this many times, I'm going to say it again. We use these devices to speed up things. We use them to multitask. And sometimes that's great because we can organize using these devices, and that can help mobilize and get this action moving quicker. But right now, I want it, since we're all in a space together and we're about to dive into a deep conversation, I want us to actually take this space to slow down and to tap into the moment that we're in. So I'm gonna do a little invocation. I'm gonna light a candle because I like ceremony, and I'm going to say some words. And I invite you to just, as I'm doing this, to just kind of allow yourself to arrive and give yourself whatever care that you need at this time. We arrive here, now, in this moment. We arrive with awareness, knowing that we are attending from different physical locations and different time zones. We arrive knowing that no matter where we are, we all sit on Indigenous land. We arrive here, now, into a digital space that some folks have access to and some do not. We arrive with breath, with body, with intention. I invite you to take this moment to feel the surface that you're sitting on or you're standing on, to feel the surface that's supporting you, to allow calm to enter into your cells, to create space inside your belly, inside your chest, your throat, your face, because this is Zoom and we use these faces intensely on Zoom. Just allow it to relax for a moment. Inside your brain, you can imagine a kind of some space opening up, like a vast space, like maybe stars or the ocean. Any image that's gonna kind of open. And as we engage in this program tonight and we dive into this conversation, do whatever you need to take care of yourself and give yourself whatever feels good during this. Thanks for joining me in that. Okay, here we go. Our topic tonight is Wealth is Your Birthright. And I think this is a really interesting title because I'm sure lots of people can say, what? What? How is that true? A lot of us ask, can I have wealth? And according to my guest tonight, the answer is yes. And the world is going to be better if you do. I want to introduce financial advisor, spoken word artist, poet, and inspirational speaker, and a dear, dear friend of mine, Kwesi Dreams. Hi, Kwesi.
Hello, hello. Thank you, Aiden, for allowing me to be here and share in this space. I'm very, very excited for what will happen today. I can guarantee it will be a life-changing event for some and just another Zoom on a Thursday evening for others. But we're aiming for the best case scenario of well all. So thank you.
So I want to start off us off tonight, just invite you, Kwesi. And just so, first of all, I'm so pleased. You know, I'm like totally over the moon that we're doing this tonight. You and I have been having conversations for almost 4 years. And I feel like tonight we get to have one publicly. And it's just so, it's such a pleasure to have you on here with me this evening. And I really appreciate the positive energy that you bring to everything you do. And I just want to get us started and invite you to just give us a little bit of context into how became interested in building wealth, interested in generational wealth and what that means to you, and then the connection between wealth and wellness in your mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, that's a lot of questions.
Take it one step at a time.
Absolutely. I want to keep it simple, and I want to, above all else, thank all of you for being here, because what is a show without an audience, right? But I definitely want you all to know, feel free to take part in the discussion, right? I'm sure there will be at least a portion for Q&As. Feel free to post stuff in the chat. But everybody here, we are part of this ecosystem. Everybody has an equal contribution. So thank you again for being here. Amy, to tackle that lifetime question. Oh my goodness, how do I summarize my life experience up to this point in 2 minutes or less? Well, let's give it a shot.
You can take your time too.
Okay, I appreciate it.
We got space.
Man, so starting with intention, I believe that my people, so-called Black Americans, and I say so-called because Black is a color, but points me on the map where Black comes from, right? I truly believe that this word Black, the word nigger, right? Well, not excuse my language, right? That is a creation of white man's imagination. Oh my goodness, too deep, too deep. Okay, let me back up.
Yes.
So I wanna be candid. And I know as a Black American, being candid, being truthful, especially in these moments, can lead to the end of my life, right? Ironically, walking outside when it's sunny can lead to the end of my life. So I'm getting to a point now where I'm very straightforward in what I say, not with the intention of hurting anybody's feelings, but shedding light on how I feel and what my experiences are as a so-called Black American in America, right? So how does that tie into generational wealth building? In my mind, how does it not, right? I believe that what we're seeing right now, what we saw just literally a few years ago with Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and Sandra Bland, right? And a whole bunch of other names. There were so freaking many, Philando Castile, right? So freaking many names. The ones that we actually saw on the news, right? That happened just a few years ago is cycling back all over again. And I know one of the most powerful things that my mother taught me growing up is that if we don't learn from our history, we're doomed to repeat it, right? If we don't learn from our history, and it's so interesting, like social media has completely fast forwarded the world. And now these events that would happen maybe every 5 years, maybe every 10 years are now happening, it seems, every year, sometimes every month, every day, right? And it's amazing because I'm really interested to see what shifts as a result of this moment, right? I remember just a few years ago when Donald Trump was elected. Can y'all believe that? A businessman with no political experience was elected president of the United States. This is like a reality show. I just can't, but like people's lives are really at stake, which is amazing, right? But regardless, I remember when Donald Trump was elected, I'm sure you all remember this, but Oakland was tore up. They just came through Oakland, buzzed all the windows, spray painted the walls. Donald Trump is the worst person in the world, and much worse things than that. And then fast forward to 2020, last week, and I see the same thing, just different names, same buildings, different names. And it's interesting because I do want to see what will be the institutional, systematic, individual change as a result of what we're experiencing again, to the point where I'm 29 years old and I'm not surprised to see a Black man die on live television. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that. When I saw it, I was more surprised he kept his knee on his neck for 9 minutes instead of 20. Like, that's just how, as a Black man in America, there's been a knee on my neck for 29 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we change? How do we make change? One thing I've realized is that what I believe is that there's a very deep-rooted respect issue between so-called white people and so-called Black people, right? When in all honesty, this Blackness that you all see is my skin reacting to the sun, which is in the universe, which none of us have control over. but how has this had such a defining impact on my life? Not by choice. When I was born, if somebody said, do you want to be identified as a color for the rest of your life? Who would have chose that? But still,
No.
here we are, right?
No.
So to wrap around to the question you asked, Amy, incredible question. How did I get here? How are you a poet and a financial advisor in the same sentence? I used to ask myself that all the time, right? But more than anything, I'm a human. And just like many of you all here today, I'm searching for what we call our purpose in life. I'm searching for peace of mind. I'm searching for happiness. I'm searching for what will bring me fulfillment. And I found through this journey, especially in helping families build generational wealth, that it's not about chasing a goal, it's about attracting it. Okay? It's not about chasing a goal, it's about attracting it. And I'm really going to make that a theme of the conversation that we have here today, because I feel like in America right now, we're chasing this idea of racial justice and reconciliation. When has that ever existed in America? Honestly, when has there ever been racial justice and reconciliation in America? We've had multiple opportunities, even going back to when the first slaves or enslaved people were released. And then all hell broke loose in the South, right? There was no justice and reconciliation there. There was a reminder that you might be free, but you are still nigger. And it was like, oh my goodness, when do we get a break, right? I remember when I was really young and Rodney King happened. And then LA, burning up, burned to the ground overnight. Plenty of opportunity for racial justice and reconciliation. All the cops let off scot-free because it's a privilege, it's a reward, it's expected to kill Black men. That's American history. Pick up a book and read it. But how did I get here? I come from a history and a background of activism, which I just call caring about your fellow man, but we call it activism, right? And I did that for a while, right? I got my first real taste when I went to college, and I went to UC Santa Barbara. Has anybody in here been to Santa Barbara or heard about it? Just show of hands, anybody? Yeah, okay, wonderful. It's a beautiful place, isn't it? A beautiful place, it truly is, right? And if you want to see some covert racism, but anyway, it was a beautiful place. I had an incredible experience, I can't even lie. I had the time of my life at UC Santa Barbara. And I also saw what it looks like to truly organize for a cause, right? And I don't know if any of you all remember this, but around 2009, 2010, there was this thing on the news about UC San Diego throwing a Compton cookout party, right? And they had like white students at this party in broad daylight wearing blackface and like bandanas, just dressing up like so-called gangsters, right? Knowing nothing about what that life is actually like, and that that's not a choice. Nobody is born saying, I want to kill and rob people for the rest of my life, right? So what forces somebody, but anyway, let's stay on topic. So that spread its wings and made its way over to UC Santa Barbara, right? They had a similar Compton cookout at one of the frat houses. It was like something you would see in freaking Dear White People, right? Happening in real life, right? That was the first time that I found out what it means to have a voice as a young Black American and to actually use that voice. And as I went through college, I was actually a Black Studies major, still not finance. Y'all like, when is he getting to the wealth stuff? I promise you, I'm making my way there, right? So I was a Black Studies major in college. And that's when I learned for the first time in my life, we weren't the first Black people who marched for freedom. And it's ironic because this is Black history is American history. But why is it called Black history? Why are we even separated and segregated in the history books? Because racism is American. Racial justice is not American. Racism is American. And one thing I want to highlight as I take a quick aside from my story. I know that right now, it's probably one of the hardest times ever to be a good white person. Like, I truly believe that, right? Like, literally being stuck in the middle between history and what our potential future is going to be, right? Just like right there. And the reason I say that is because as Black people in America, I don't speak for all of us. I don't need to. I speak for myself, right? As Black people in America, I know that we're not outnumbered, right? We're out-organized. And this is what I was talking to Amy about just the other day, leading up to this call. We're not outnumbered. There are a lot of us, even more of us in Africa, where I was stolen from, right? But there are plenty of us. And what, it's ironic because if there's anything that I admire about so-called white people, it's the way that you all organize, right? Like, I was watching the video of Sandra Bland when she was arrested before they murdered her in her jail cell, right? This is back in 2015. You can look it up if you don't remember. But I was watching the video, and for the first time I realized there were two cops there, right? So in this video, the cop pulls her over, right? Supposedly she forgot to flash her traffic signal, driving while Black. So pulls over this Black woman, and then he starts to be aggressive with her, right? Telling her to get out of the car. And she had the presence of mind to actually record some of this. And naturally that antagonized the police officer. He didn't like that too much. And so he actually pulls her away. He makes her put away her phone, but we can see what's happening on the dashboard camera of his police vehicle, right? And so he actually pulls her out of the camera's view, but not out of its sound, right? And then you hear her saying, "You're about to break my wrist, you're about to break my wrist." So we can kind of paint this picture in our mind of what's happening. And it was just like, oh my goodness. There was another officer there because I heard a woman's voice that wasn't Sandra Bland's. And she didn't say anything in defense of this single Black woman in broad daylight being aggressed upon by this white officer, like a white male officer, right? She didn't say anything about it, even though you don't have to be a genius to know something is wrong here. This is not supposed to be happening. But what I've found is that white people are very good at keeping their mouth shut. Black people, not so much. Not so much, right? And I don't blame us for that. I don't blame anybody. It's about responsibility. And I know that even though we didn't dig ourselves into this hole, we got to get ourselves out. We got to get ourselves out. And what does that mean? What does that look like, right? I'm gonna speak this to y'all. I'm just gonna talk. This is why Amy wanted to come here.
I mean,
no, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for everything you're sharing tonight. That I recognize that that this is a risk to share these things. I want us all to understand right now that this act of vulnerability, this act of sharing, means something to you, Kwesi, that is different than what it means to me. And I just want to like say that out loud. And also to say that, well, that we can go wherever you want in this conversation tonight. I am here, we are all here, and I'm gonna go wherever you wanna go. I do remember the first time that we actually had dinner together. Mm. And you told me about your trip to Ghana, which was like, I was like, I don't know, we were kind of experimenting with like, hey, so who are you and what do you like? And like, tell me about yourself. And the first thing you wanted to talk to me about was that experience in Ghana and how that shifted things for you. Yeah. And so if you wanna talk about that, that's good. If you wanna keep going in the direction you're going, that's good too.
I'm doing my best, y'all, to stay afloat, to stay above the light. Yeah. But obviously even though I'm smiling to keep from crying, right? Like that's legitimately how I feel. And I know that at the end of the day, I have two options, right? I can submit to the lower vibrations and the lower level disempowering energy, or I can embrace the higher vibrations, right? And to lift my own and attempt to lift others. Because I truly don't believe anything is going to change on this vibration, this wave that we're currently riding. Anyway, let's talk about Ghana.
Yeah, well, the reason why I bring that up, the reason why I bring that first conversation up in terms of this talk this evening, Well, and before I get into that, one of the things I want to just say to everyone here is that this notion that white people are good at organizing means we have power to help change things right now. So if that's what we're good at, then let's fucking do it, okay? And let's do it for this cause. Let's do it to, like, I mean, America, whatever, this United States has never been just. So we have this opportunity to kind of, like, you know, dump everything out and, like, break things apart so that they can be rebuilt properly. And I just want to kind of encourage us to remember that we all have a voice and a part in that. That's how that's going to happen. So the reason why I bring up Ghana, the reason why I bring up this first conversation that we had, is because there were two things that you talked about. You talked about your experience in Ghana and how that was, like, instrumental to you. These, like, quintessential moments of how these instrumental moments that have led up to this moment, right? This moment where you are this wealth builder. You are this voice of empowerment to so many people across racial lines, right? And then also just, like, this conversation we had about capitalism. I remember having a conversation about capitalism and, like, you know, and then, you know, watching how, like, the notion of money has really shifted for you over this time.
Oh my goodness. Let's start with Ghana. Start with, and then we'll segue into the money stuff.
Great.
That's the chapter in itself. But
Great.
Can I get a show of hands? Does anybody know where Ghana is, just off the top of their head? Does anybody know? Ghana? Okay.
There we go.
Terrific. Outstanding. So I didn't know either. Honestly, I didn't know either until I traveled there. And that was actually as a result of me studying abroad through the UCEAP program. And I didn't just spend a vacation there. It wasn't a month or a week. It was actually an entire year. I lived in Ghana, which is in West Africa, for an entire year. And it's about 2 countries over from Nigeria, you know, in that little Western Black region, right on the coast. And it is beautiful. It is like things that I had never seen on television in my entire life. Like National Geographic, because they're actual people. National Geographic likes animals, but the people were so freaking beautiful. And it was amazing because this is the first time in my life I experienced what it was like to be white. Like the first time in my life. What do I mean by that? When I was in Ghana, I wasn't Black anymore because everybody is Black in Ghana. I wasn't Black anymore. So people looked at me and they thought I was Ghanaian until I opened my mouth. And like, oh, American. And I saw their demeanor change. Most for the better, some for the worse, understandably. Right? All you got to do is turn on the news, see how many bombs we dropped this week during coronavirus. But anyway, so that was the first time in my life I saw what it was like to be in a truly privileged position as a result of where I come from, as opposed to for a majority of my life having it and experiencing it in the exact opposite. Right? Having to be really careful, having to make sure my English is as proper as it should be, right? I can't tell you how many times growing up I got called an Oreo just because my family and my parents had the sense of mind to send me to the white schools because they knew we might not be wealthy, but we can put him around people who might be wealthy sometime in their life. And, you know, he might pick up a few things that'll help protect him throughout the rest of his life, even being here. What I'm saying and what I feel and what I'm experiencing is not exclusive to me. As a matter of fact, there are millions of other people in this country and around the world who can attest to this same fact. But sometimes they might not say it in a way that's translatable or receivable by the people who need to hear it the most. Think about that. Think about that. So I don't want you to just isolate me. I know that's one of the problems that we have with the Obama era, right? We isolated him, right? He is the good Black. He's the good Black with the proper English and the nice family. And he dresses so nice and he's so dapper and he talks like one of us, right? There's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it. Like this, okay. So going to Ghana, realizing for the first time in my life that I'm a human being. What? I'm a full human being. And I'm just like, even now when I reflect on it, this is about 5 years, so about 4.5, 5 years ago that I came back from Ghana after that year-long experience. And the entire time there, even now, 5 years later, I'm just thinking, man, I saw how much that experience changed me. What about all these other people here who will never get to experience being able to breathe for the first time in my life?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what it's like to breathe until you realize you've been underwater for your entire life, suffocating. And I don't want it to seem like, oh my goodness, being Black is terrible. That must be the worst thing in the world. It's actually, I love it. I freaking love it, which is ironic. And I feel like because I love it so much, other people are aiming to take that love away from me. But going to Ghana, realizing that I'm a human being, and this idea of Blackness that so many of us are forced to shape our entire lives around doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I remember watching an episode of, I think it was The Cosby Show, and Mrs. Huxtable made this amazing cake, right? Some of y'all might catch what I'm saying, but she made this amazing cake. And of course, Dr. Huxtable goes in there, he sees this cake. He got the most incredible sweet tooth in the world. He cuts out this big piece out of the middle and takes it out and starts eating it, right? And then he realizes about halfway through, oh my goodness, I just cut this huge hole in this huge chocolate cake that my wife probably spent hours making. So what does he do? He doesn't make another cake. He doesn't buy another cake. He gets a whole bunch of paper towels and stuffs them inside of the cake and covers it up with chocolate frosting. But that's what, when I went to Ghana, I found out I've been living my entire life as a cake with a big hole in it. And somebody tried to stuff paper towels inside of me and cover it with chocolate frosting. And when I bit into it, I realized this is not real cake. Until I went to Ghana and I saw, oh, this is what real cake tastes like. This is what white people are fighting so hard to protect: a sense of self-worth and identity, a place of origin, a language that you can relate to, knowing who your great-great-great-grandparents are and where they're from. Anyway.
I want to thank you for the cake metaphor. And I also want to tell you that I had a conversation with a friend just the other day, and she said the same thing about pizza, that basically we were eating around the racism, that we were being asked to eat around the racism. And like, basically, like, if you don't, whatever, you don't like it, just take it off. Like, it's like, like if it's toppings you don't like or something, just kind of eat around it. That's the thing that she kept saying over and over again. And it's very powerful to kind of hear the same idea, because it's this the eating imagery, this notion of eating. It's what we put in our gut. It's like what we digest, what goes in our stomach. And this notion of not having what is real, like not being able to eat the real food. And and that sense of nourishment too. So I just kind of wanted to chime in there with that thought.
That's heavy. And like I said, I am not the only, like, please don't put me in a vacuum. Don't assume that I speak for all of our community, but also don't put me in a vacuum. Just think, the Black friends in your life, the Black people in your life, do they feel like this gentleman feels? And if they do, what can I do to at least make space to make sure that they're heard? Because one thing I realized in Ghana, I was there with white students. As a matter of fact, I was there with students from all around the world. It was an incredible experience. Even meeting Germans for the first time in my life and realizing not all Germans are Nazis. And it might sound funny, but honestly, that's what kept going through my mind as I was looking at this German woman. And that's when I realized how powerful the American media machine is. Even if I didn't want to think that, who planted this seed in my mind that Germans are Nazis? This was in 2015. Right. Anyway, so going to Ghana, I mean, even now, as a poet, as a spoken word artist, as a person who's been blessed with the gift of gab, it's difficult for me to summarize that experience, right? Of seeing somewhere that looks, tastes, and feels and smells like home. Even after all these hundreds, potentially thousands of years, it still felt like home. And we all got to go home one day. Wherever you're from, we all got to go home because we're all from somewhere. In this place, even here in America, the air is different. The air, like, I'm sure you all know it. Some, if not most of you, are artists, I assume, in some way. I believe all humans are artists, but is everybody here like kind of an artist or identify as one? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So artists know like energy. Energy is everything, right? Because we, in these vessels that we share, these are just bodies. These are just casings, right? What's inside of us, that soul, that spirit, or as we identify it, is rooted to the source energy that we identify as God. That's fact. You don't have to believe in God, but everything comes from something. Just like we're born from our mother with an umbilical cord, just think of that spiritually, energetically, right? And imagine all 8 billion people on this earth are sharing an umbilical cord that's tied to the source energy. That's what's happening, right? That's a fact. What I realized when I got back from Ghana is that the energy in America as a nation is different. I remember getting on the plane in Ghana, taking that, 18-hour flight, and then landing here in America. And that's the first thing that I noticed when I walked off the plane. The energy is different. It's almost like, and I'm like, whoa, I haven't felt that in a year. And when you don't feel something for a year, you're gonna notice. And again, I thought, man, there are 20 plus million people here who look just like me, who probably feel the same, but have never felt what it's like to feel differently, regardless. So Ghana was an amazing experience. Long story short, I became there. I became, right, like a human being, not a black man as I'm identified in America, born a criminal in America, but actually seeing and breathing and feeling and touching something that was realer to me than anything I had experienced in my entire life. And realizing I'm one of the lucky ones who get to get out of here. And that's part of what brings me into generational wealth building. Because one thing I know as a God honest truth is that, remember, racism is American. It just is. Turn out like it is to the point where we joke about it in public. It's not even like a shameful thing anymore. Like it's ingrained in American society. What would America be without enslaved people? What would America be without the extermination of Native Americans? And some other things. There are beautiful things that have happened, right? But we have to talk about this contextually within what's happening right now and how this is not. I'm sure some of you all have seen, I hope some of you all have seen, there's this picture and it comes from the early 1800s, right? And this is when America went full force with their westward expansion. And there's this picture of about 300 buffaloes, all dead, just lined up on top of each other like carcasses, right? And the caption of the photo is, this is the extent that they went to eliminate the Native Americans. They literally killed their food source. Passing out smallpox blankets, that's chemical warfare. That's intention. That's intention. And that's what I feel my community is missing, right? I'm not saying let's chemical warfare against all white people. I don't feel like that's going to solve our problems as a community. But I am saying, what is our intention and how far are we willing to go? Malcolm X said the same thing, like 50 years ago. What is our intention as a people, as a community, right? I remember Muhammad Ali said, well, we talk about this notion of so-called good white people, right? And I'm just, stop me if I get too deep, Amy. Stop me if I got, and it, as like,
okay.
yeah, just Go ahead. Go ahead.
So what I'm going to say that, again, I will go with you wherever you want to go with this, Kwesi, but I also, you know, with your alliance, I will also like start to pull us back into the topic too. Okay, so let's keep going. Like we'll go however it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let me bring.
So you choose. You choose.
And this is honestly, this is a microcosm of the conflict in my mind, right? Like these things that I want to discuss as a Black man that have nothing to do with money, but realizing as a community, nothing is going to change for us until we own our own. I know that for a fact. We cannot continue to live our lives under master's thumb. We cannot continue to live our lives at the table on our knees, begging for a bigger crumb this time, this generation, a bigger crumb. Do you know how long it took to integrate schools after Brown versus Board passed? Because what power do we have in this society? Okay. Wrapping up. How did I get here?
How did you get here? So
yes, and okay, let's do it. Let's get into it. So, Ghana brought me to Amy, right? And I say that because Ghana brought me to Oakland. Okay, 7,000 miles apart, by the way. Ghana brought me to Oakland. I'm not from here. I'm from SoCal. I am also a gentrifier, right? Another badge I don't wear with pride, right? I'm not from here, even though I love it here, and I'm so grateful for everybody that makes this place feel like home. Ghana brought me here. Ghana brought me to Amy. Ghana also brought me to an event. I wrote a book when I was in Ghana. It's called Pieces of My Soul, Volume 1. I'll have to post that in the chat. It's on Amazon, right? And I was flipping through it today, and I haven't read this book or maybe even touched it in about 2.5 years. And it almost brought tears to my eyes because this book that's full of memories from my experiences in Ghana is like a living journal that I printed and sold to the world. And that was my first step towards becoming, right? Shedding these layers of identity that had been forced down my throat for generations, and I just inherited, right? So that's part of what led me to Amy. I actually got an email. We don't have to tell that story, but there was a gift card involved, and you know I love free things. And I went
a
to this
strange interview that we did where we didn't know each other.
Here. And I'm not a Shakespeare fan, but I know there's a gift card on the other side of this. I'm locked in. I'm ready. And I met Amy of all people. And that reminded me this world is so full of intention, right? But I met Amy and we had an extremely memorable conversation, extremely memorable, that led to my first viewing of, what was it, A Winter's Tale?
A Winter's Tale. And then
oh my goodness.
We saw Middle School Macbeth. And then I kept dragging you to plays.
And I remember I had asked Amy, why would you ever have a play on a roof? That's like just one of the things, but regardless, right? There were so many experiences that happened as a result of me going to Ghana, even me getting involved in this work around helping families become financially minded, right? And one thing I felt like, I'm gonna be completely honest with y'all. I started this with the intention of helping my community. I would like, honest to God, I really, really did. And I was not ashamed of that. I was extremely proud of it because I wanted to help get my community out of the dump that redlining had forced us into and slavery had forced us into and going back on all these promises like 40 acres and a mule had forced us into. And I said, you know what? If nobody else is going to tackle this front, this is what Martin Luther King was murdered for, by the way. Some of y'all might already know that, right? It was completely fine when he was saying nonviolence, but when he started talking about the poor people's movement, when he started talking about economic empowerment, when he started talking about redistribution of wealth, all of a sudden he's not protected anymore. He was protected when he would calm down the Black people from burning down buildings, right? Because it costs money to put those buildings up. When he started talking about reclaiming spaces, when he started talking about a solidified movement across racial lines, a movement that would involve 99% of our nation's population. That's when he was murdered. He got his head blew off too. Oh my goodness. But anyway, since then, I've seen that it's almost like becoming a pariah to get involved in this financial work. And that's still something I'm trying to wrap my mind around. Like, at one of the pillars that we need the most within our community, it seems like nobody wants to touch. And even when I think of, like, I grew up in the era where we didn't really have Black leaders, right? Most of them had been murdered, and our leadership transformed into athletes and rappers and drug dealers, right? That became my leadership here in America, especially before Obama, right? But I didn't see any Black financial advisors. I didn't see any Black wealth builders, right? I didn't see any Black consultants. All of these things that I knew existed, I had heard of Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan. I had heard of all these companies. Why had I never heard from them? Because my family had money problems. But where are these money experts that are supposed to be helping me out? So that was my story. And I came into this work with the understanding this is a lot of people who look like me stories. What I found doing this work is this is a lot of people's story. Everybody, Black, white, male, female, Christian, Muslim, able, disabled, intelligent, never got past the 5th grade. A lot of people, even doctors, lawyers, accountants, CPAs, aren't educated on how money truly works. Because here's what I want y'all to catch, okay? This is really, really important, because I know I experienced this growing up. I was led to believe, either consciously or otherwise, I was led to believe that being financially literate is a side effect of being wealthy. Essentially meaning you can only know how money works if you already have money. And I'm sure some of y'all would agree with that, right? That's how I felt growing up. So something was telling me, you shouldn't be touching this money thing, right? That doesn't belong to you. I remember my stepdad growing up, he was so excited to one day make $100,000. And that capped my life without me even realizing this is the hardest working man I'd ever met in my entire life. In my entire life. Even up to this day, I'm still trying to catch up to how hard that man worked to keep our family afloat. And I remember him every day, his mantra, his affirmation, I'm gonna go out there and make $100,000. And I was like, man, that must be a lot of money. Not anymore. Not anymore. That's the average amount of debt an American family has, $156,000. So if you're making that every year and you have $156,000 in debt, that's barely gonna get you back to the black. So who's telling us $100,000 is a lot of money? I know I see it on the movies all the time, but I had to get involved in work that was really helping people. And what I found is that financial literacy is not a side effect of wealth. Wealth is a side effect of financial literacy. So why aren't we learning in schools how money really works? Because I don't know anybody above the age of 18 who's legally not paying taxes, or at least doesn't have to attempt to pay taxes. I don't even think Donald Trump pays taxes. And that's a conversation in itself, because there are legal ways to only pay your fair share in taxes. But here's what I want to ask y'all. Between poor people and wealthy people, who pays less in taxes? And who pays more? Because I always felt like poor people pay more in taxes, but by nature of being poor, doesn't that mean you make less money? So why are the people who make less money paying more in taxes? I don't know. Whatever, let's go watch some YouTube. Let's go scroll Instagram, you know, let me waste some more of my life. But that's just the road, the path that many of us are walked down, like right on the cusp of having an answer. And then George Floyd gets a knee to the back of his neck for 9 minutes. And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. I don't know if anybody remembers, but it's an election year. I haven't seen anything about the election on the news in like 3 months, because it's been all COVID and now all George Floyd. And before that, it was all the stock market crashing. And now it's all 60 million people who are out of work. And I'm just like, man, what's next? What's next? And here's the thing. In life, there are only winners and witnesses. That's it. And I'm not saying becoming wealthy makes you a winner, not by any means. Because wealthy people, we see them on the news, right? Some of the worst marriages, kids on all kinds of drugs, living in a house that's not a home, right? Like that's where I've seen and been around wealthy people. Like I've seen it. I see none of that is not true. But at the same time, one thing that we can't say is they don't know how to manage their money. None of us can say that about wealthy people. But how many of us can say that about ourselves? And what do our lives look like, just in terms of the options that we have? Because that's what wealth is. I'm going to be honest. I should have brought props. Money is useless. It is. Probably not going to be the fan favorite quote from this conversation, but money is useless. It's paper with slave masters' faces on it. Not all of them, but most of them. And ones who were complicit in the exchange of flesh for cash, right? Capitalism. But money is useless unless you put it to work. When you use money to save or to invest or to build or to buy things, that's when money becomes valuable.
And one of the things that you've been telling me since you started, I mean, how long have you been doing training in the finance?
A year and a half, almost 2 years now.
A year and a half. And this has been like such a huge transformation, Kwesi. I mean, it's just been such a huge transformation. I mean, just like and it has happened in such a dense, you know, I've just seen you just explode with this, with the financial literacy and the educating people. And just, you know, one of the things that you kept telling me as like, you know, I've never seen you so happy as when you had started doing this. And you're like, and the thing you kept saying was, I am saving lives every day. That is the thing you kept saying. And you kept saying, you know, it just, the energy that came out of you because of this work, because of putting money to work for people who need it.
Yeah.
That just like, I mean, and you know, not too long ago, actually, just a few months ago, you were like, Amy, we got to talk. Amy, we got to talk. We got to talk about your money. We got to talk about your money. And I was like, I don't want to talk about my money. I don't want to talk about my money. I don't want to talk about any of this stuff. And we had this back and forth that I assume you do with a lot of your clients, where there's this kind of reticent, you know, to have the conversations about money and to trust an advisor even, right? You know, and what is that reticence about?
As I said earlier, and thank you for reminding me of that, Amy. I really, in this work, you don't hear that often, right? When it comes to financial advising, you rarely hear people say, I'm saving lives every day. But I've realized through the work that I do, the organization that I'm a part of, this is our intention. Our intention, because we come from the families who need our help the most. We come from those families. So we realize that as we're doing this work, if we can't help our own family, what's the point? What's the point? So to answer your question, Amy, I come from a background of community activism. This is a story that I started to touch on about college and my first experience, like standing up for something that I knew was wrong, right? Standing up against something, right? I brought that same energy. That's my calling. That's what I was brought here to this earth to do, right? To use my voice and speak up and say something that other people might not feel the boldest to say. Right? I've gotten in trouble a lot. You can ask my wife. I've gotten in trouble a lot saying things that I shouldn't be saying, but also saying things that need to be said. Because I've realized as a Black man in America, especially in finances, I thought there weren't a lot of Black men who are like active within our community and like doing things to actually uplift us as a collective, right? I thought there weren't a lot of us there. I thought there weren't a lot of Black men in college, right? At UCSB, we were 2%. 2% of the entire student population out of 100%, Black Americans were 2%. You talk about some systemic racism. I know more than 2% applied to get into the school. So where were they at? But still, I paid all those tens of thousands of dollars to go to that school, and nobody taught me how money works. Nobody taught me at 17 years old that I probably shouldn't take out this loan that I'm going to be paying 13% on. A lot of people don't even understand because we're not educated on how interest works. And there's this guy, y'all might have heard of him before. His name is Albert Einstein, right? Like really smart guy. And he has this quote about compound interest. He said it's the 8th wonder of the world. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Those who understand it, earn it. Those who don't, pay it. And in my generation, compound interest, unless you're paying it on student loans, is a foreign concept. Where do I get one of those compound interests? Check your credit card statement. Check your student loans. Check that car that you financed. And these are the things that we're encouraged to do. Think about all the commercials you see telling you, buy, 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 buy. Think about that. And just think, the human mind is a living hard drive. The hard drive was designed after the human mind. Everything that goes into it, whether we realize it or not, we pick it up. Everything, we store it in the hard drive. So if we have 90% of everything about money telling us to buy something, when we go to Target and we get that itching, we get the, I don't know if I need a new comforter, but it's on sale. Even when it's on sale, it's still more expensive than it costs to make it. Oh my goodness. But how many people are telling us and encouraging us to save money, to invest money, to grow our money, to put 20%? Think about this, right? Has anybody heard of the IRS before? Anybody heard of that? Of course, that's like other uncle. Always comes around when you don't want him to come around, which is every day. But the IRS still finds out where we live and comes begging for another plate, another cup of sugar. I got 1 cup of sugar left and you want 1 cup of sugar, we're gonna have to fight. But the IRS, I'm sure you all would agree, they're gonna get theirs one way or another, even if they have to garnish your wages, even if they tax the stimulus checks that we were sent a few weeks ago. Everything is taxed, right? Think about how much of your money goes to the IRS in a lifetime. Think about this. And I'm not here to put anybody's face in the dirt and make you feel disempowered. But until we shine the light on these issues, we won't see how much dust is in the room that we need to clean up. So that's the purpose of this portion of the conversation, right? Let's expose the dust. Then let's talk about how to clean it up. So over a lifetime, let's say you pay 40% of everything you make to the IRS. That's pretty standard. Let's just say 40%, some more, some less, okay? Are you saving 40% of your income? If you have to give this outside entity, right? I live in East Oakland. I know everybody knows where that is. I live in East Oakland. I could point outside my house right now and point to at least 3 or 4 potholes in the road, at least. I could walk to the nearest school in this East Oakland neighborhood and look at all the amenities and resources that aren't going into that school. Where's this money going? Where's this money going? The government just borrowed $7 trillion for these stimulus checks. we've been paying taxes for the last how many centuries? Okay, so to answer your question, Amy, somebody's got to do it. Somebody, and it's not just me. I'm very blessed to know that it's not just me. Even in this work that I do, even with the communities that I partner with, we are still, as African Americans, we are still greatly, greatly underrepresented. But it's getting better every day. And I'm very excited about that. So
I want to say one thing in here, if I can. Yeah. So one of the things, and then I'd like to, if it's okay with you, Kwesi, I'd like to open up to everybody.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing that I do want to say is, so just very recently, Kwesi and another financial advisor, Nick, helped me reallocate, like kind of get out of this bad situation with an IRA thing, right? And you can see how financially literate I am because I can barely remember all the terms that one uses to even speak about it, right? And it took a while for me to like actually agree to even do all this, to learn to, and one of the reasons why it took a while was because I was scared. I was scared that I was getting into something that I didn't understand, but the fact was I was already in something I didn't understand. And then the other reason was that I felt stupid. And actually, I felt stupid. I didn't want to have my lack of words and concepts be exposed. I was afraid of what Kwesi now, who had all of this education and seemed very literate and agile with what was going on, would like know literally how not together my finances were, that my sort of financial chaos would be revealed. And Kwesi, you said to me on a walk, you're like, Amy, do you trust me? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I thought I trusted you, but I don't trust money at all. Like, I don't trust money. Like, I don't even understand money, you know, like I don't trust money. And I was scared that it would somehow, also the other thing I was scared of was that by receiving this help, I would not be able to pay for that help. I was scared that there was a deal that was in here somewhere, like we can help you, but you have to pay us all this stuff. And I was like, I don't have any money to pay anyone to help me. So I'm not able to access any of that stuff. I'm not able to learn because I need somebody else to help me learn, and like I can't pay for them. I'll tell you, what I learned was the organization that Kwesi works for, I did not have to pay them to help me. That there was a way that organization is I don't totally understand it even, but like it somehow, because you know I don't retain these things, but it somehow works so that the client doesn't pay for that service, that we are actually we get ourselves into a better situation, we learn a bunch of stuff, and then but we don't pay for the education, that the education is given to us. And that was just like, I mean, I still am a little bit like, really? Is that really true? Like really? I mean, I kept kind of coming back with like, can we poke holes in this? Is this really for real? You know? And so now 2 things have happened. One is that we moved my money, and it took a lot of time to move it because there's all these ways in which they don't want you to move the money, right? And so Nick and Kwesi helped me go through all the weird barriers that I would never have been able to go through myself, get it out of there, and like move it into a place that is really going to serve me. And all along, you helped me learn the words. And no matter when I needed to like, please explain this again, I didn't quite catch it the first time, you were there to do it. And like, there was never a sense of like being made to feel stupid. You know, there was never, that was, you know, that was totally removed from the situation. So I just want to say that and so this was very transformative to me, which is why I kind of want to, you know, I want to have this out there. I want to people to know that. And then I want to open it up now, if that's okay with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let me clarify just
sure.
like things you said, because that was
Yes.
freaking beautiful. You talk about a testimonial. Oh my goodness. Who is this Kwesi guy? Let me sit down with him. But
I can write you some good testimonials.
I will circle back to that. I'm gonna circle back to that. But I do want to clarify. So the organization that I work for, we have such strong ties with these companies like Transamerican, Nationwide, Prudential, Pacific Life, all these companies you've heard of before. They work for us, right? We partner with those organizations to bring these solutions that have traditionally only been offered to wealthy families. And we bring them to, I don't come from a wealthy family. A wealthy family will come from me. I promise you that. But we bring that to the families that need it the most. And through that, we don't charge a dime for these services, not a dime. As a matter of fact, I don't even get paid unless I can help you. Literally, if Amy would have any time to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this, I want to keep giving my money to the government at whatever tax rate they decide. If she said that, I wouldn't have gotten paid. I would have went and, you know, helped another family, but still, right? So it has to keep me in line with doing what's in the client's best interest. And I love it. I don't lose a night of sleep ever for the work that I do. So thank you for that wonderful testimony.
Yeah. Well, and because that's real change, you know, and it's not just changing, it's changing narrative, you know, it's changing the narratives that exist inside of us. And you've spoken so articulately about the kinds of narratives that are there specifically for you and people who look like you, right, in this country right now. And these narratives, you know, a lot of us hold some kind of narrative around money. And there's a way to rewrite that, I think. And so let's open this up right now to folks. And I'd love people to be able to ask questions, make comments, just participate in the dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of people on the chat right now blowing up. So let's bring some of these comments in.
Yeah, and to set the intention, please ask me. It doesn't have to be money related. It doesn't have to be race and politics related. Like, preferably keep it in alignment with the discussion we're having, but I'm an open book, please.
So right now, everyone is off of mute. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm also going to just read some things that had already been put in from our Facebook live feed and also in our chat. One from Facebook was Julie Kuwambara said, UCSB alumni, I can relate to covert racism, but also had the time of my life. So an agreement there for you.
Welcome to America. Welcome to America. It's racist, but I have the time of my life. Uh-oh.
Jake, did you have a question? I saw, we saw you unmute, or Jessica.
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, as a matter of fact, so I did post it as well. How can we help educate and motivate people to rise within the system? Just namely because, well, first off, you know, I don't want to go into too much of a tangent because I also have a lot of questions, but thank you for this discussion more than anything. I mean, this is what I appreciate about Moment to Moment and Ragged Wing right here, is the fact that we are having these deeper conversations surrounded by these issues. And so a lot of what I even experience in my day-to-day life, as well as, you know, just educationally, as well as teaching, is how do we educate people to the point where it's like not trying to, you know, be harsh or be judgmental or anything like of the sort, but to really just say, you know, hey, we're all people. How can we, you know, at least have a conversation surrounded by things that we honestly don't know sometimes?
Man, that's an amazing question. That's an amazing question, because that's what I like. What Amy shared was so vulnerable and so true, because one of the main things that keeps people from sitting down with me is that fear of humiliation, right? To the point where sometimes we aren't even open to seeing what other options could be just because it involves money, right? So part of it is that assumption like, I can't afford this, which is a negative, disempowering statement. But this isn't the fault of the victim. We've been taught and told, hey, you shouldn't do that, right? Like you should stay within your comfort zone. You should keep accepting good, not realizing that we're exchanging great in order to keep ourselves with good. Man, and I'm being so careful because I've learned a lot, and I'm glad Amy has seen it, because she saw the transition, me going from poet, spoken word artist, community activist to boom, financial advisor. And it's almost like it happened overnight. For me, it was a transition, but this is something that started years ago, right? I didn't know it would lead me into doing this work, but it's in complete alignment with my intention to help as many people as possible. Because one day my time is going to expire. And I don't know if I'll see freedom in my lifetime, true freedom, but that's not my intention. My intention is to make this world the greatest that it can be for the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation, even if that's my own. All right, so to answer your question, Jake, one thing I found is that I have to lead how I want others to follow, right? If I want others to be vulnerable with me, then I have to break that barrier and break that mold within this work. That's not for my community. For the people who are on this call, it's not just about money, right? This is about a livelihood. This is about freedom in our own right, under our own terms. This is about owning our future, not just renting it, right? Because owning our future, right? Determining the way that we want to live our lives. That's a true definition of freedom, as far as I know. But does that answer your question, Jay?
Yes, for now, absolutely. And yeah, thank you. Like I said, I have more questions, but I also want to make sure that I get time to everybody else as well.
And what I'll do before we get out of here today, I'll leave my contact information. So if you have more questions, or God willing, you're interested in just learning more about what I do, I'm not here to take your money. I'm here to save your money.
Great.
I want to help you.
I appreciate that, definitely. Thank you.
So can I just check in for a moment? So usually we end at 6:20-ish, but I'm going to let this go until 6:30 tonight.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, Kwesi? Is that okay with you? Joshua, what about you?
Sounds good. Yeah. We have another question from Leonard in the chat. It was, so Kwesi, what is the long-term goal and vision for your advising? What are you building?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I operate strictly within intention, in case you all can't tell. I don't do anything unless there's a greater purpose to it. Even if it's that huge apple fritter that I ate right before I hopped on this call, I wanted a sugar rush. So I can give y'all my best. But to answer your question, Leonard is actually on my team. He's a graduate of UC Berkeley. He's studying for his PhD program at Illinois University. And
University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
Oh, okay. There's Leonard. So he's actually part of my team of financial advisors, and we're out here doing real foundational work in the community. So to answer your question, Leo, I feel like he wants me to answer this more for everybody who's here in this chat. But my intention ultimately in doing this work and all the work that I do is to help my community get free, honestly. And when I say my community, I'm in alignment with people who are in alignment with me. But in the words of Malcolm X, I am Black first. I am Black first. And I'm not ashamed of that. As a matter of fact, I'm empowered by that, because being Black first is not a threat to what other people are and identify as. It doesn't have to be. Even if I identified as a Black racist, I don't have nearly as much power as a white racist. Up to the political show. Do y'all see Donald Trump's tweet? When they start looting, we start shooting. If I even insinuated I'm going to shoot somebody, the SWAT team is kicking down my door right now. But it's great. So that being said, I believe that my people deserve a fair shot at determining our life circumstances, at determining the neighborhoods we want to live in, the food that we want to eat, what school we want our children to go to, even what car we want to drive. Just being free and living a whole life. I'm not saying in order to do that, we need to take it from anybody else, but I am here to give that opportunity to my community and help as many people, including Amy, as many people as I can along the way. And that's it. What's next, Joshua?
Anyone else have something to voice from the Zoom, or I will voice something from the chat?
I have a thought.
Yay!
Hi, Kwesi.
Hello, Anna.
Hi. Okay, so I don't even know if this is what I believe, so take it with a grain of salt, okay? But I just I'm just curious your thoughts about, or whether you kind of heard this from people, or kind of what would you say to people who say that like teaching how to build wealth is like just teaching people how to play the game, you know? And that actually what we need to is to like you know, take apart the game and build a whole different one, you know, like, you know, using it. I guess the question is like, is it using the master's tools, you know, or not, you know, or what's your perspective on that?
English is the master's tool. The public education system is the master's tool. Any money that we have, even if it's 30 cents in your pocket, is the master's tool. My goal is to help people take the money they have and multiply it. That's it. That's it. We need money to live. And here's what I want y'all to think about. I mention this on every appointment that I go on, but think about what human beings need to live, like need to live. You need oxygen, and you need water, and you need shelter. Right now, we can get oxygen for free, but what about the two other things, right? Right now, we can get oxygen for free. But what neighborhood you live in determines the kind of oxygen that you're breathing, and that costs money, right? How long can a human being survive without water? What, like 3 days? Maybe 7 tops? But where can you go today and get free, clean, drinkable water today without climbing up a mountain that's probably owned by Crystal Geyser? So like, Anna, you make an incredible point. And I come from, and that's the thing, right? I come from that background of political activism, right? Like, I get it, I really do. But I also know for everybody who's been on the call, we are not outnumbered, we're out-organized. And that's not gonna happen overnight. Think about how long it's taken white people to organize their way up to politics, to every foundational structure in our society. That didn't happen overnight. They had to build their way to that. And where are we starting from? When 40% of Americans are illiterate, not financially illiterate like can't read. So where are we starting from, and where do we plan to go? So to answer your question, Anna, absolutely we're using master's tools. And I'm using it too, which is why I went to UC Santa Barbara, so I can learn to speak better and reach more people. That's my path.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Who's next, Josh? Talk to me.
Well, also in the Facebook, I'll throw this out there. This is a comment actually. Andrew Woon said money and socioeconomic status has a lot to do with race and gender.
Absolutely. I don't even know if that's a question. Is racism American? True or false? True. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there was a request for you to read one of your poems before we before everything wraps up.
Wow.
But we're also open for taking any other questions from the participants. Just unmute yourself or pop it in the chat.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Oh, we just got one in the chat. Okay, so Lori Kosowski said, what would you say to people who are in debt and older and soon might not be able to pay their rent?
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing question. That's like, I help, but I'm not Jesus. I don't make miracles. So more than anything, I could learn more about the specific situation, because every plan that I set up is customized to that family's specific needs, right? Let's talk about it. Like, Lori, that's, man. And there are a few different ways I can answer that, right? That's one of the ways. And it's always so loud and East Oakland. I love it, but it's like, I'm on a freaking call trying to change people's lives. Keep it down. Anyway, so Lori, I would love to talk to you one-on-one. That would be the best way that I can help you as an individual, if that is an individual question. And also, there are a lot of opportunities to work within this industry. So many opportunities. If anybody here is interested in learning more about the opportunity side that's changing my life every day, I get paid to help people pay themselves first. That is the nature of my work. It's freaking amazing. I never knew anything like this existed. That's why Amy is like, oh my goodness, this is the happiest you've ever been, because I didn't know that I could serve others and serve myself simultaneously. I always thought they were separate. You serve others, you're poor. You serve yourself, you're wealthy, right? If you're a lawyer for the big corporate industries that are spilling oil into the ocean, you're gonna live the best life ever, right? But if you're on the ground doing work for the community, then you're gonna live a pretty rough life, but you'll never lose a night of sleep. unless you hear gunshots outside your window, right? I always thought that they were separate, but now I found a way to make them together. So if you want to learn more about being a licensed agent in this industry, even on a part-time basis, please reach out to me. Worst case, we can have a conversation. Best case, I can help you change your life forever. The opportunity is there. All right, Lori, reach out to me. Who else, Josh?
Anyone else have a question on the chat that they want to throw out there?
And those were some amazing questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. I got a question from Deborah. I don't know if this was meant to be private, but it looks public enough, so I'm going to throw it out there. This is Deborah Robinson, not Deborah Sass. I see.
You know my mom's there.
That's Deborah. No, that's another Deborah. So Deborah Robinson asked, how are you helping people in East Oakland? Wow, that's a good question. Also, are you sharing your information with the high school students? So short answer, the way that I'm helping people in East Oakland right now is by sharing this information, and also, most importantly, oh, she said it's not a private question. Thank you, Deborah. Most importantly, being the example that I want others to follow. Like, honestly, I can't, what Amy just spoke to, just that fear of humiliation, that fear of being exposed for not knowing. Just imagine if your entire life and for generations before you, everybody in your lineage have been told that, right? You don't know racism, you don't know what you're talking about. Sexism, you don't know what you're talking about. Freedom, you don't know what you're talking about. 40 acres and a mule and a fair shot to live a decent life, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Don't you know where your people are from? No, not that scary Africa place. You popped up on a plantation. You were put here to work. What are you doing trying to break free of that mode, right? Just imagine if that was ingrained, like literally going to school and learning everything except your own history. Everything except where you come from. And this isn't meant to be a pity party, right? But Deborah, to answer your question, I'm doing right now what is my best. And that's going to expand exponentially as it has these last 2 years. But I've realized that the best way that I can help my community right now is to not be the lesser version of myself, right? I need to be that example because I realize sometimes people only respect things that they can't touch, right? If it's distanced, then there's a desire humanly to get closer to it. And I just want to be the brightest light possible. So to answer your second question, am I sharing this with high school students? Absolutely. Every single time I'm invited to an opportunity, the last one was a few months ago, pre-COVID. If anybody remembers there was a before COVID. Imagine having a child right now. There was a time when we could go outside without face masks on. What is happening? And we have a businessman with no political experience as the president of our country for the last 4 years tweeting when the looting starts, the shooting starts. You can't make this crap up. But anyway, it's real life and it's really important. So every time I'm invited to speak to the students, absolutely. Even though you have to be at least 18 years old to start one of our programs on your own, right? We have college plans which the parents can start, but you're never too young to have information. Because the kids are getting information already, that doesn't mean it's the right information. And if nobody's educating our parents on how money works, how can we expect them to educate us? And that's what I'm here to do. Just provide as many resources, be that example as much as I possibly can. And this is the last answer to that question, because I never want anybody to think if you're seeing this, whether it's live or in the post, whatever, pre-recorded, whatever. So if you're watching this, I want you to know I'm not in this for myself. Even though I will benefit immensely from it, I know that for a fact, I'm not in this for myself, because the ultimate intention, and this will help answer Leo's question, is to establish wellness centers within my community. If I can't help us get free and have our own nation, our own hospitals, businesses, schools, banks, etc., my intention is to establish wellness centers so at the very least, we can begin the process of healing. Because until we are healed, nothing is going to change. Even if all the white people disappear from planet Earth tomorrow. And I don't want that to happen personally. I don't want Amy to disappear. But even if that happened, we are not going to erase centuries of brainwashing, even down to being Black American, which I talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Oh, Deborah Robinson said I am also a Black female. Thank you, sister. Thank you for joining us today. But we need to heal, and it's going to be a process. But if we don't start that 1,000-mile journey with one step, life is going to pass us by. So we have to start somewhere, and that's what I plan to do with the wellness centers. Well, thank you for that wonderful question, Deborah.
Okay, it is 6:31. We are going to wrap up. But one thing I do want to say, first of all, I want to say thank you, Kwesi, because I don't know. I mean, it's just like every time I'm around your presence, my world expands, and I have more faith and hope in myself and in what is possible. And I think this is a moment that we have choices, and we can make choices. So as we close out, at the end of these episodes, oh, and I also want to say also, you know, Kwesi, you and I can talk later about having another episode together and doing some more of this, so we can see what you think about that. We'll talk about that later. So this might not be the last time you see Kwesi on this program. We'll see. A lot of times at the end of these things, I leave a kind of creative prompt, because this is an arts organization. Right now, I'm just going to leave a couple questions for folks to think about. And you can think about it in whatever medium you like. So if thinking about it means drawing it, if thinking about it means you know, thinking about it through music or poetry or whatever, do what you need to do. But these are some thoughts. What sensations emerged for you around the topic of wealth, money, etc.? What stories have you inherited? If they are negative, how would you rewrite them? And then lastly, and this is a new one, Joshua, so if you're posting these, I'm just making this up right now, this next one. What can you imagine in the future for yourself in relation to money and wealth? So those are my questions. We are giving you some resources, all kinds of resources, and also information to stay in touch with Kwesi, to continue this conversation beyond this moment. That's part of what this is all about, is to begin conversations. We're not going to finish this conversation today. There are way more conversations to continue to have in relation to this topic. So please take a look. And we have a tip jar too for our awesome guest. So please, if you can and are able, if your income has not been impacted by this pandemic, please do tip our guest. He's doing this pro bono tonight, and it's greatly appreciated. Kwesi, do you have a last statement? Do you have a last thing to say in this space before I kind of do a couple of plugs and then say what do you have any last things to say?
Yes, and I got a message saying the Calendly link on my website is not working. Oh my goodness, thank you for letting me know, goodness gracious. So I will post the Calendly link, but I really would like to share a poem. I know that we're going over time. I'm not going to completely claim this space. Do we have time for a poem, or do they need to come back for the next one?
We absolutely have time for a poem.
Okay.
Of course we do. I'm not going to say no to that.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Give me 1 second. Okay. So I was telling y'all when we first, and thank you all for staying here, by the way. I noticed that pretty much everybody has stayed the entire time, which I truly, truly appreciate. Being somebody who does Zoom meetings like this quite often, we usually end with about half the participants that we started with, but I'm so grateful that we were able to add some value today. I really, really do. And I hope that no matter what decision you make, it was at least one decision that you made, and that will lead to an improvement in your life, right? That is my only intention, and so it shall be. So what I'm gonna do, I just posted my Calendly link if you would like to set up a time for us to get together. 100% free, no backdoor nonsense, right? But really with the intention to help you out. And before we wrap up, I'm gonna share something with y'all today. So this is from a book that I wrote. It's called Pieces of My Soul, Volume 1. Volume 2 is in the works, and it's been in the works for about 4 years, but don't tell my publisher. So this is Pieces of My Soul, Volume 1. I wrote this in Ghana, West Africa. I had not written a poem in my entire life up until the point I was 23 at this time. And there was just something that said, you need to tell your story. You need to speak this into the world so that other people know that there's real change outside of what we call America, right? So here's what we're gonna do. Pieces of My Soul, Volume 1. This is available on Amazon even to this day. But what I'm gonna do, just so we can end this, keeping in mind everybody who has been impacted, not just by COVID, not just by the market crashing, but also by the racial injustice that has existed in our country for centuries, right? And nothing's gonna change until we change. But I'm gonna share this story with y'all that I wrote in the form of a poem. It's called Gil Scott Heron. And I believe Amy has heard this maybe once or twice. It's been some time. And okay, so I'm gonna share this with y'all. Once I find the page, there we go. Okay. I dedicate this to George Floyd. Quite often lately, my colleagues have been questioning me, dissecting me, asking, Kwesi, are you ready to go home? To most I lie, but I tell the truth. To some is in response, I ask them, how do I answer when I don't have a home to go back to? Or how do you call somewhere home when it's obvious your family doesn't love you? What hurts even worse is looking my Ghanaian friends in the eyes and telling them nothing but good intention lies, because when they ask me about returning, I really want to say, the way cops are shooting back home, this native son may not make it back alive anyway. I used to be afraid of the dark, which I'm not ashamed to admit, but what could be more frightening than how afraid I've been made in my own black skin? I used to be ashamed of this skin, which I am ashamed to admit. Even at 12 years old, I couldn't believe I've been cursed with such a dark life sentence. America never really wanted to let go of her, niggas. Kidnapped me from my mother, and history hasn't been the same since. And if I'm so free now, then why does my history still start with slavery and the rest still neglected? As if nothing mattered prior to European contact. Now ain't that some shit? It's ironic how you wouldn't teach me your religion because you said I had no soul, until you convinced me it was a fair trade to exchange my rebellious soul for your pacifying Bible. 600 years later, and we're still wash, rinse, repeating the same cycle. It's ironic how you talk about the Jewish Holocaust like the greatest crime against humanity. But what about my Holocaust and the crimes you committed during slavery? I see the shame in your eyes, but what's even sadder to see is how you never want to discuss it when we have company. But the truth shall set you free. Don't waste my time with lies. Thug nigga, drug dealer, I see the look of disgust in your eyes. Same reason the Ku Klux Congress won't let Obama get a bill through, because they'd rather watch America crumble than let a nigga tell them what to do. And speaking of which, it makes me sick seeing black-skinned Negroprians with sellout accents wearing the latest fashions, emulating the oppressor, ultimate culture clashing, spitting in the face of our forcibly forgotten past in. Black-skinned overseers in sheets clothing preaching to us, progress is a marathon, not a sprint. Meanwhile, the train already left and all my white friends were already on it. Ain't that some shit? Fortunately, a king named Martine taught me to sacrifice my life for the beat. But I don't mean the kind of beat that has you moving your feet. I mean the kind of beat that enlivens my people protesting in the streets. I mean the kind of beat that inspires my brothers and sisters sleeping under prison sheets. I mean the kind of beat that invigorated the souls in 400 years of enslaved human beings. And to my freedom fighters in Ferguson, Baltimore, the Bay, and beyond, I see you grooving to that same beat, no disguise. I'll be home soon, and I hope my new shade of black is an abomination in America's eyes. Because Assata Shakur taught me, we have nothing to lose but our chains. So as long as we keep hope alive, we can continue to pave a new revolutionary road starting today. Because still we rise. That's it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't heard you do one of those in a while, and it's such a treat. It's such a gift. Thank you. Thank you for your gifts, Kwesi.
Coming back, and thank you for yours. Thank you for the space. I do gotta run, so I posted my phone number. No excuses. Feel free to purchase the book and feel free to read it and share it. Read and share what I do and why I do it. But more importantly, see what it can do for you. Especially Lori, I'm expecting to hear from you immediately. Let's sit down and talk. Let's make moves. Thanks, y'all. Y'all stay beautiful. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening and stay safe.
Great, thanks. I'm just gonna let everyone know what's happening next week, just in case you want to come back for another moment to moment. Although that one was pretty fantastic. Next week on Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific time, we have a topic called Everything is Connected. And I'm just gonna kind of read you the blurb that I put together this afternoon. As we crash the system that allowed us to evolve, as 400 years of racial trauma erupts in our midst, as we weather the continual impact of a global pandemic, how do we justify and redefine humanity's presence on Earth? And what role do the arts play in all this? I'll be featuring Alan Weissman, an international journalist and best-selling author of The World Without Us, among many other books and articles, and we'll be looking at the many facets of this immense, historical, tumultuous time. Thank you to Joshua for helping out tonight, doing double duty on this evening. Thanks to all who have joined. Again, thanks to Kwesi, who just exited. And thanks to all of you. And may each of you be well and healthy and safe. And I will see you next week, hopefully, on Moment to Moment. Thanks, everyone.